What if I told you that everything you've ever admired, every painting that moved you, every film that haunted you, every lyric that stuck in your soul was stolen? Not stolen in the way we imagine theft, not torn away, not plagiarized, not copied mindlessly, but stolen the way an artist steals, with eyes wide open, with reverence, with the humility to say, I don't know how to begin, but I know what I love. This is The Heart of Steel Like an Artist by Kleon, a small book, barely 150 pages. But within its simple black and white pages lies a profound manifesto, a philosophy not just for artists, but for anyone who wants to live a more creative, honest, and expressive life. This is not a book about how to become famous. It's not a guide to social media virality or perfect branding. This is a book about becoming real, about finding your voice by honoring the voices that came before you, about starting where you are, using what you have, and making something, not because the world told you to, but because your inner world won't let you do anything else. Kleon isn't a professor or a guru. He's a writer and visual thinker, a man who once worked a day job, made poems by blacking out newspaper text, and shared them online. His work went viral not because it was perfect, but because it was raw, honest, and human. When he was invited to give a talk to a group of college students, he spoke from the heart. That talk became this book, and the message has resonated with millions. In this video, we're going to take you through Steel Like an Artist chapter by chapter, not as a dry summary, but as a journey. Each idea will unfold like a page in your own creative story. We'll explore what it means to start before you're ready, to embrace influence without fear, to build habits that support the soul, and to trust that limitation, not freedom, is what gives birth to brilliance. This isn't just about art either. It's about how to think, how to work, how to live more fully in a world that constantly demands perfection but forgets the beauty of process. Whether you're a painter or a programmer, a writer or a startup founder, a student or someone who just wants to live with more curiosity, this story is for you. So if you've ever sat in front of a blank page, if you've ever felt like an imposter, if you've ever wondered, do I have anything original to say? Then take a breath. You're not alone. Originality isn't what you think it is, and you don't need to wait for permission, you just need to start. This is the art of creative theft, not as crime, but as communion. Not to copy, but to collect, to absorb, to remix, to find the threads that move you and to follow them toward your own expression. Let's begin where all artists begin, in the shadows of those who came before, with our hands open, our hearts full of questions, and the quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, we were meant to create something. Welcome to Steel Like an Artist. Chapter 1. Steel Like an Artist. There's a moment in every creative journey that feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. You're staring into a blank page, a white canvas, an empty stage, and all you can think is, what do I even have to say that hasn't already been said? That's the myth, the trap, the whisper that tells you if you're not original, you're nothing. But Kleon flips that myth on its head with one of the most liberating truths. In all of art, nothing is original, and that's a beautiful thing. The idea isn't new. T.S. Eliot once wrote, "Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal." Steve Jobs echoed it. Good artists copy, great artists steal, and Kleon draws from them both, along with musicians, filmmakers, poets, painters, and thinkers who all understood something fundamental about creativity. You are a mashup of what you let into your life. Your taste, your obsessions, your influences. They form the creative DNA you carry. And when you begin to create, you're not pulling something out of thin air. You're connecting dots that others can't see because they're your dots. This isn't about plagiarism. This is about creative lineage. Imagine your favorite artist. Now imagine the people they were influenced by. Who did they admire? Build a family tree of influence. Track the branches. Suddenly you're part of something much bigger. A grand conversation that stretches across time and discipline. When you study the work that moves you and really study it, not just consume it passively, you begin to absorb its language, its rhythm, its way of seeing, and slowly something shifts. You don't just copy, you transform. That's the difference. Bad theft is surface level. It's imitation without understanding. Good theft is thoughtful, layered, alive. It takes what came before and bends it through a personal lens. Kleon encourages us to embrace influence deliberately. If you love a writer, don't just read their books, read the books they read. Watch the films they referenced. Learn their history, their quirks, their technique. By tracing the creative bloodline, you find out where they stole from and you go deeper. And in doing so, you become part of the chain. He uses the metaphor of a remix culture, like a DJ who samples an old record, not to copy it but to create something fresh. Think of the Beatles borrowing from Chuck Berry, Tarantino borrowing from spaghetti westerns, Bowie, Prince, Kanye, all of them thieves in the best way. And because they stole with soul, we don't see replicas, we see reinventions. Here's the truth no one tells you. When you start making things, you'll begin by copying your heroes. That's okay, that's necessary. Because in copying, you start to understand. You decode the hidden structure. You learn their decisions. And eventually you'll start making your own. And somewhere along the way, you'll drift. You'll get bored of copying. You'll make mistakes. And in those mistakes, your voice begins to emerge. Kleon also challenges us to redefine what we mean by steal. Stealing isn't theft in the literal sense. It's admiration turned into action. It's seeing a spark in someone else's fire and using it to light your own candle. It's recognizing that no work stands alone, that every masterpiece is a mosaic of smaller pieces. He writes, you don't want to look like your heroes. You want to see like your heroes. That's the key. You're not here to replicate their work. You're here to absorb their vision and then evolve it. So how do you steal like an artist? You begin by collecting. Carry a notebook, screenshot what inspires you. Keep a swipe file, a sketchbook, a wall of quotes and images and colors that resonate with something in your bones. Let yourself fall in love with things. Let yourself be moved. And don't worry if your work feels derivative at first. That's part of the apprenticeship. The goal isn't to stay there. The goal is to keep making until what's borrowed becomes blurred, until your voice, your style, your questions begin to shine through. This chapter isn't a permission slip to copy. It's a reminder that the creative path doesn't begin with originality. It begins with honesty, with asking, what do I love? What do I admire? What makes me feel alive? You steal like an artist by surrounding yourself with greatness and then daring to add your voice to the choir, because in the end, you realize something powerful. What you choose to steal from says everything about who you're becoming. Chapter 2. Don't wait until you know who you are to get started. We live in a world obsessed with identity. Find yourself, they say. Know who you are before you do anything else. But for the artist, for the creator, that advice can be paralyzing. Because the truth is, we don't find ourselves before we begin. We find ourselves through the act of beginning. Austin Kleon cracks open this chapter with a liberating truth. You don't have to know who you are to start making things. In fact, trying to figure yourself out in theory before doing anything in practice is a trap, a well-meaning detour into an endless loop of self-doubt and hesitation. The reality is, identity isn't discovered in a vacuum. It's something you build, piece by piece, through doing, through trying, through playing. You are the sum of your actions, not your plans. So many people wait. They wait until they feel ready, until they have a voice, until they think they know who they are. But the creative process doesn't work that way. Imagine a child pretending to be a pirate, or a doctor, or a space explorer. They're not waiting to earn credentials before they try on the identity. They're experimenting, performing, exploring. And in that play, they discover something real. Kleon tells us, fake it till you make it. Not in the sense of deception, but in the sense of imitation as revelation. If you want to be a writer, write, even if it feels like you're pretending at first. If you want to be a painter, paint, even if it feels like play, because creativity is imitation first, and innovation later. Every artist begins with mimicry. Bob Dylan didn't emerge fully formed. He started by imitating Woody Guthrie. He wore his clothes, he sang his songs, but over time, Dylan's own voice took root and bloomed. The same is true for you. You begin by copying your heroes, not to steal their spotlight, but to stand beside them long enough to understand what made them shine. Kleon calls this copying as education. You trace the moves of your mentors, you absorb their rhythm, you echo their choices, and as you do, you begin to notice where your instincts diverge. Those divergences are your fingerprints. You're not meant to be a carbon copy. You're meant to begin with copying and end with invention. There's also an important distinction to make here. Copying style is shallow, but copying thinking, the deeper why behind the choices. That's where the transformation happens. Don't just draw what your heroes draw. Ask, why did they frame it that way? Why did they use that color? Why did they choose that phrase, or chord, or cut? You learn not just what they made, but how they saw. Kleon offers a subtle but powerful reminder. We are shaped by what we imitate, so choose carefully. Pick heroes who are worthy of imitation, not just for their talent, but for their character. If you copy someone's technique, you may inherit their values too. So find the artists, thinkers, and builders whose work resonates, not just with your ambition, but with your soul. And don't limit yourself to just one role model. Build your own creative cabinet of ghosts, a hall of heroes you can consult when you're stuck. Mix their voices, combine their tools, and slowly a hybrid emerges. Here's where the inner critic tries to sneak in again. It whispers, but you're not the real thing, you're just pretending. But that's the beautiful paradox. Pretending is how we become. When you imitate your heroes, you're not being fake. You're trying on the skin of possibility. You're stepping into a shape you're growing into. Think of it like a costume that eventually becomes your skin. You pretend until it feels less like pretending and more like home. And then something happens. You stop asking, who am I? And start answering it through action. This chapter is a call to courage, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, daily kind. The courage to begin without certainty, to make without permission, to become while still becoming. Kleon's philosophy reminds us that the only way to discover your voice is to use it out loud, on paper, in public. even before you're ready, especially before you're ready. So here's the truth. You are allowed to make art before you know who you are. You are allowed to try things on. You are allowed to copy your heroes. Because in the end, you're not just trying to find yourself. You're trying to build yourself, one brushstroke, one verse, one decision at a time. You don't wait for identity, you forge it in the fire of creation. So if you're waiting, stop, begin instead. Start the blog, write the song, launch the project, paint the canvas, build the app, speak the words. Don't wait to be someone, become someone by doing the work. Chapter 3, write the book you want to read. Every great work of art begins with longing, not for fame, not for money, but for something that doesn't yet exist. Something the artist aches to see, feel, hear, or read, but can't find out in the world, and so they make it. That's the core message of this chapter, right? The book you want to read. Create the thing you wish existed. It sounds simple, but it's radically empowering. Most of us grow up believing that creativity is something bestowed, that you need a license to write a novel, permission to start a business, qualifications to design or compose or build. But Kleon reminds us you don't need credentials. You need curiosity. If there's something missing in the world, maybe that's your invitation to create it. This chapter is about flipping your mindset. Stop asking, what does the market want? Start asking, what do I want? What are you obsessed with? What do you wish someone had made for you? What did you need 5 years ago and couldn't find? That gap you feel, that emptiness, that's your map. Austin Kleon didn't set out to become a best-selling author. He was a poetry-loving artist who made blackout poems from newspaper clippings. He posted them online, not because he had a marketing plan, but because he wanted to share something he would have loved to stumble across. And others felt the same. Because when you make something you love, you're not alone. There's always someone else out there who's looking for it too. Maybe they just don't know it yet. This is the power of making for an audience of one. It takes courage to stop chasing trends and start listening inward, to say, you know what, this might not be for everyone, but it's for me. And that's enough, because when you create with that kind of honesty, people can feel it. They sense the sincerity. They hear the heart behind it. And often it resonates louder than anything manufactured for mass approval. The creative people we admire most, the innovators, the pioneers, the culture shapers, almost never set out to please the crowd. They set out to satisfy their own hunger. Tolkien didn't write The Lord of the Rings because fantasy was hot. He created a world he longed to live in. J.K. Rowling built Hogwarts out of a personal need for magic. Quentin Tarantino once said, I make movies that I want to see. And Steve Jobs famously insisted, we don't do focus groups. People don't know what they want until we show it to them. Kleon encourages us to pay attention to our taste, not just what we like, but what we crave. Think about the books you return to, the movies you rewatch, the podcasts you binge, the weird niche forums you get lost in. Those aren't distractions, they're clues. What patterns keep showing up? What emotions do they stir in you? What do they all have in common? When you know what you love, you begin to understand what you were meant to create. This chapter also touches on something deeper. Creative fulfillment doesn't come from chasing applause. It comes from creating something that makes you feel more you. Something that reflects your worldview, your sense of beauty, your questions, your contradictions. It's why writing the book you want to read is so satisfying, because it's personal. It's tailored to your soul. It's a conversation with your younger self, your future self, and anyone who's walked the same crooked path. Kleon suggests that if you ever feel stuck creatively, ask yourself this one question. What would I love to see in the world that doesn't yet exist? That question is a compass. And the answer is your blueprint. It doesn't have to be a book, of course. Maybe it's the playlist you can't find, the app you wish someone would build, the podcast that no one seems to be hosting, the kind of YouTube channel you'd binge if only it existed. Whatever it is, if you're missing it, others probably are too. And even if no one else finds it, you still win, because you've made something honest, something real, something that brought you joy and expression and clarity. That's what makes it art. There's a beautiful paradox in this idea. When you create for yourself, it often ends up connecting with more people than if you tried to guess what the audience wanted. Why? Because specificity is powerful. The more personally you speak, the more universally it resonates. When you try to please everyone, you water yourself down. But when you please yourself fully, fiercely, without apology, your work becomes magnetic. Not for everyone, but for someone, and that's enough. This chapter is a gentle rebellion. It invites you to stop waiting for permission, to stop tailoring your creativity to trends or likes or approval. Instead, listen to your taste. Follow your curiosity. Write the thing you've been searching for. Create the show you'd want to watch. Design the thing that would thrill you to stumble upon. Kleon's message is clear. You already have the answer. It's the thing you're secretly hoping someone else will make, but maybe, just maybe, that someone is you. So here's the question. Kleon leaves us with, what's the thing you can't stop thinking about? And what would happen if you stopped waiting and just made it? Chapter 4. Use your hands. We live in a world of screens. Our hands hover over keyboards. Our eyes dart across glowing rectangles. We swipe, we scroll, we tap. And while it feels like we're creating, often we're just reacting, consuming, clicking through the surface of things. But creativity, real creativity, begins deeper. And sometimes, to reach it, you need to get your hands dirty. That's what this chapter is about. Use your hands. Kleon makes a bold, almost old-fashioned claim in the digital age, where everything moves fast and happens online. One of the most radical things you can do is step away from the screen and make something physical. Why? Because our bodies know things our brains forget. There's a kind of intelligence that lives in the fingertips, in the muscles, in the act of touching, cutting, shaping, smudging, gluing. It's a slower rhythm, a deeper one. Kleon talks about his own process, how he splits his creative work into two zones, digital and analog. In the digital zone, he writes, formats, organizes. But in the analog zone, something magical happens. He sketches, he cuts and pastes. He fills notebooks with messy lines and rough edges. No undo button, no backspace, no algorithm, just movement, mess, and muscle memory. Because when your hands are involved, your mind quiets. The inner critic, the one that nitpicks and hesitates and overthinks, takes a back seat, and in its place comes flow. Children understand this instinctively. Give them crayons, blocks, Play-Doh, they dive in. No fear, no plan, just doing. And in that doing, they discover. As adults, we unlearn that freedom. We're taught to stay neat, to stay productive, to stay digital. But the creative mind doesn't thrive in sterile, spotless places. It thrives in the tactile, in the real. Kleon invites us to build a space where our bodies can lead. A studio, a garage, a corner of the kitchen table. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be fancy. But it has to be yours. A place where materials live: pens, paint, scissors, scraps of paper, glue sticks, thread. A place where you can lose yourself in process, not just product. There's a difference between typing and writing, between clicking a beat and tapping it out on a drum, between designing with a mouse and sculpting with clay. When you use your hands, you make mistakes. You leave fingerprints. You tear the edge of the page. You smudge the ink. And those imperfections, they're often what make the work feel alive. Think about the music of a vinyl record, the warmth, the slight crackle, or the handmade mug with a crooked handle, or the handwritten letter with crossed out words and uneven lines. These aren't flaws. They're human fingerprints, evidence of care, of presence, of real time spent. Kleon reminds us creativity isn't just about ideas, it's about movement. He references the phrase, the mind is a garden, the hands are the tools. You can't think your way to a harvest. You have to dig. This isn't a rejection of digital tools, far from it. Kleon still uses a computer. He loves the internet, but he knows that the best work often comes when the body leads and the screen waits its turn. When your hands are moving, your mind follows. You find connections you weren't looking for. You stumble onto accidents that lead to breakthroughs. You get out of your head and into the work. So what does this look like in real life? Maybe it's keeping a sketchbook, even if you don't consider yourself an artist. Maybe it's storyboarding your next idea with sticky notes. Maybe it's cutting up magazines to make visual mood boards. Or writing your ideas on index cards and arranging them across the floor, like puzzle pieces. It could be sewing, gardening, building furniture, making zines, collaging, origami, wood carving. The point isn't the medium. The point is the tactile engagement, the realness, the risk of mess. There's something sacred about stepping into that zone, where your hands are busy and your mind is quiet. Because here's the deeper truth Kleon is pointing to. In a world that's becoming more virtual by the day, your body is your secret weapon. It keeps you grounded, it slows you down. It helps you listen to intuition, not just logic. He urges us to trust our instincts, to follow the thread of a feeling, even if we don't know where it leads. Sometimes your hands know what your mind hasn't figured out yet. This chapter is more than a tip. It's a creative philosophy. That to access your most original, soulful work, you might have to unplug. You might have to walk away from the blinking cursor and instead pick up a pencil, tear a page, make a mark, touch the work, let it touch you back. Because at the end of the day, creativity isn't just a cerebral act, it's a physical ritual, one that begins with a simple, quiet invitation. Use your hands. Chapter 5. Side projects and hobbies are important. Not everything you make has to change the world. That's a truth we often forget in a culture that glorifies hustle, performance, and productivity. We're told to monetize every passion, to post every sketch, to turn every hobby into a side hustle. And somewhere along the way, we forget how to play. In this chapter, Kleon offers a quiet rebellion. Side projects and hobbies are not distractions, they are lifelines. They're not just optional, they're essential. Because sometimes, the best ideas come not when you're grinding, but when you're goofing off, when you're tinkering with no goal in mind, when you're working on something just because it brings you joy. Kleon writes, it's the side projects that really take off. Stuff that's just play. And there's something profound in that. When we allow ourselves to create without pressure, without a deadline, without expectations, something shifts. The ego steps aside. The critic quiets and we're free to explore. He shares how some of his best work didn't come from chasing a big idea, but from following small curiosities. A doodle here, a collage there, an experiment with no clear end. And yet, these little nothings sometimes led to everything. Side projects are where accidents happen, where you combine things you didn't know belonged together, where two unrelated hobbies crash into each other and make something entirely new. Think of Steve Jobs studying calligraphy, a class he took out of pure curiosity. Years later, that love of typography shaped the design of the first Macintosh computer. Or how Brian Eno, a pioneer of ambient music, started composing generative soundscapes out of boredom and accidentally birthed a genre. These aren't exceptions. They're reminders that play is serious business. Because when you follow your interests, even the weird, random niche ones, you're collecting raw material. You're filling your creative toolkit with odd little parts that might one day click into place. Kleon urges us to think of creativity not as a straight line, but as a spiderweb. You follow threads. Some lead nowhere, others loop back. Some cross over in surprising ways, and once in a while you spin gold. That's the beauty of hobbies. They expand your worldview. They make you multidimensional, and they keep you from burning out on your main thing. Because let's be honest, even your dream project can become a grind. Even passion can start to feel like pressure when it's your only focus. That's why side projects matter. They give you perspective, they give your brain a break. They remind you that it's okay to make something just because it feels good. Kleon introduces the idea of the creative ecosystem. Think of yourself not as a machine, but as a garden. Your main project is the tree, but the side projects, they're the wildflowers, the bees, the soil. They feed and support the whole system, often in invisible ways. A hobby doesn't have to be artistic to be creative. Cooking, gardening, rock climbing, knitting, fixing old bikes, it all counts. Because creativity is not confined to one domain. It's a way of thinking, a way of seeing, and hobbies train your brain to stay curious. Without the weight of results, there's a childlike magic in doing something for its own sake, something no one sees, something no one judges, something you don't have to be good at. Kleon writes, a hobby is something creative that's just for you. You don't try to make money or get famous off it. You just do it because it makes you happy, and that happiness, that play, that freedom, it seeps into your real work. It reminds you why you started creating in the first place. He also warns about the danger of over-branding yourself when you define yourself too narrowly. I'm a designer, I'm a writer, I'm a filmmaker. You start to box yourself in. You reject ideas that don't fit the brand, and slowly your creative world gets smaller. But when you give yourself permission to explore, to dabble, to go off course, your world expands. So here's the invitation in this chapter. Let yourself be a beginner. Let yourself be bad at something. Let yourself play again. Pick up the guitar you haven't touched in years. Take that improv class you've been curious about. Start the birdwatching journal. Relearn the thrill of coloring outside the lines. And resist the urge to share it. Not everything you make needs to go on Instagram. Some things are better left private, sacred even. A little pocket of joy that's just for you. Because when your creative life is fueled only by what gets likes, what gets attention, what gets monetized, you risk starving the deeper part of you that just wants to explore. Kleon's own work proves this. His book began as a side project. His blog, his blackout poems, his zines, none of it started as a brand strategy. It was all, you just play. And because it came from a place of authenticity, people connected with it. So don't underestimate your side projects. Don't dismiss your hobbies. They are not distractions from your real work. Often they are the roots that make the real work possible. Let them grow wild. Let them be weird. Let them lead you somewhere unexpected, because, in the end, creativity isn't just about output. It's about aliveness, and nothing keeps you more alive than doing something you love, just because you love it. Chapter 6. The Secret. Do good work and share it with people. There's a secret to success that no one talks about enough. It's not sexy, it's not easy, but it's the foundation behind almost every creative breakthrough. Do good work and share it. That's it. Austin Kleon doesn't try to complicate it. In fact, he strips it down to something elemental. Make things, put them into the world. Repeat. This chapter is a reminder that the creative journey isn't always about genius or luck, but about showing up and being seen first. Do good work. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean perfect work. It doesn't mean groundbreaking, award-winning, mind-blowing work. It means honest work. Work that reflects your curiosity, your taste, your effort. Work that you care about. Work that gets a little better each time. Good work doesn't begin with talent. It begins with practice. And Kleon encourages us to focus, not on being discovered, but on being dedicated. He shares his own story. Before his books reached millions, he was just posting art and writing on a humble little blog. No grand strategy, no agent. Just a daily habit of making and sharing. Because here's the quiet truth. If you want people to find your work, you have to give them something to find. Which brings us to the second half of the secret. Share it. This is where many creators hesitate. They think, it's not ready, I'm not good enough. What if no one cares? But sharing doesn't mean shouting. It doesn't mean promoting yourself like a product. It simply means opening a window, letting the light in, saying, "Hey, I made this." Maybe it'll mean something to you, too. When you share your work consistently, gently, generously, you send out signals. You say, "This is who I am. This is what I see. This is what I care about." And over time, those signals attract others who care too. Not everyone, not the whole world, but your people, the ones you were meant to connect with. Kleon insists you don't need a massive platform to start. You need a place, a container, a blog, a newsletter, a YouTube channel, a sketchbook, a podcast. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's yours and that you show up. There's power in building a tiny corner of the internet where your voice lives, where your work can be seen not because you've gone viral, but because you've been real. It's not about chasing fame. It's about creating visibility with integrity. This is especially important for emerging artists. If you're just starting out, the best thing you can do is share your process. Show the journey. Let people see how you think, how you try, how you stumble and evolve. Not every post needs to be polished. In fact, Kleon argues that showing your process is often more powerful than just showing your product. It invites people into the story. It makes them part of your growth. And it gives them permission to grow too. There's a beautiful humility in saying, "This is where I'm at. Here's what I'm learning." It creates connection, not just consumption. And connection is everything, because once people find you, they start to follow. Not just your work, but your voice. Not just your skills, but your spirit. That's how communities form. Not through hype, but through honest resonance. This chapter is also a call to patience. Kleon reminds us that it's not about overnight success. It's about long-term presence. Doing good work and sharing it again and again, even when it feels like no one's watching. Because eventually someone will be. And they'll see not just a single post or piece, but a pattern, a body of work, a quiet flame that never stopped. Burning. Think of it like planting seeds. You don't know which ones will grow, but the more you plant and the more sunlight you give, the more life begins to appear. Doing good work and sharing it isn't just about building an audience. It's about building yourself. It keeps you accountable, it keeps you moving, and it reminds you that your work has value. Even when you're still finding your way, Kleon is careful to point out, this isn't about chasing validation. It's not about likes or metrics or going viral. It's about participating in the creative ecosystem, contributing something meaningful, adding your voice to the collective conversation, and you never know who's listening. He tells the story of how one of his blog posts was shared by someone he admired, and that connection changed everything. But it only happened because he'd shown up, because he'd shared, because he'd made himself findable. So if you're waiting for permission, if you're waiting for your work to be perfect before you show it to the world, this chapter is your gentle nudge forward. Do the work, share the work, and let the rest unfold. Not everyone will care, not everyone needs to, but someone will. And that someone might just change your life, or better yet, your work might change theirs. Chapter 7. Geography is no longer our master. Once upon a time where you were born, determined everything. The schools you could attend, the people you could meet, the culture that shaped you, the opportunities or limitations that would define your creative life. But today, that old map has been redrawn, and in its place is something far more fluid, far more open, far more yours to navigate. Austin Kleon opens this chapter with a quietly revolutionary truth. Geography is no longer our master. Thanks to the internet, the world and all its brilliance and complexity now lives in our pockets, and that changes everything. You no longer have to live in New York to write. You don't have to move to LA to make music or film. You don't need to be born into the right circles or zip codes or institutions. If you have a phone, a connection, and something to say, you can reach anyone. This chapter is a love letter to that freedom, to the idea that no matter where you are, whether it's a small town, a crowded city, or a quiet farmhouse on the edge of nowhere, you can build a creative life that's rich, connected, and meaningful. Because place no longer defines your potential. That doesn't mean geography is meaningless. Quite the opposite. Your where still shapes your how. It gives you texture, perspective, a sense of place that can deeply inform your work, but it doesn't have to limit you. You are no longer confined by your coordinates. Kleon encourages us to become digital neighbors with people who inspire us, to follow their work, to join their conversations, to read their blogs, watch their videos, subscribe to their newsletters. He suggests finding your virtual scene, the group of people, however spread out, who speak your creative language. They might be fellow writers, painters, thinkers, tinkerers. They might not even know you yet, but through their work, their voice, their curiosity, they guide you, challenge you, expand you. This is where the internet becomes more than distraction. It becomes community, a classroom, a stage, a library, a studio, a gallery, a tribe. You get to build your own creative world, curated, chosen, crafted to nurture your growth. Kleon himself built his career this way. Before his books were on shelves, he was just one voice in a sea of blogs, making things, posting them, connecting with others, not as a celebrity, not as an influencer, but as a participant. And that's the shift. In the old world, gatekeepers controlled access. Publishers, producers, professors, critics. You needed their permission to be seen. In this new world, you are your own permission. You can publish your own work. You can build your own audience. You can create your own space. The cost of entry has dropped. The tools have been democratized. What matters now is not where you live, but how you engage. Of course, there's a flip side. The internet can be overwhelming, loud, distracting, exhausting. It's easy to get lost in the noise, to compare yourself into paralysis, to feel small in the shadow of algorithms and influencers. That's why Kleon makes an important distinction. Use the internet deliberately. Don't let it use you. Don't find the corners that feed you. Follow people who lift you up. Mute the noise. Block the toxic. Curate your feed like you'd curate your studio with intention and care. Because online, just like in real life, your environment matters. And speaking of real life, Kleon reminds us not to abandon the physical world. Yes, the internet expands your reach, but your daily surroundings, the street outside your window, the coffee shop around the corner, the woods behind your house, they feed your senses in a way no screen ever could. He suggests walking, wandering, eavesdropping in cafes, going to museums, parks, flea markets, places that surprise you, places with texture, because creativity still begins with presence. And sometimes, the best thing for your online work is an offline moment. There's a delicate balance here. You can be global in reach and still local in rhythm. You can post a piece of writing that travels across continents and still spend your mornings barefoot in the garden. This, Kleon says, is the new geography, centered in yourself, not in a city. And that's powerful, because it means anyone, truly anyone, can build a creative life, no matter where they're starting. You don't have to wait for the right connections. You don't need to move to the right place. You don't need someone else to open the door. You can build your own stage. You can find your own peers. You can make your own map. And maybe best of all, you can do it on your terms. So if you're listening from a small town, or a distant village, or a quiet suburb, this chapter is for you. If you've ever felt like you're too far from the action, too far from the scene, too late to the party, this is your reminder. Geography is no longer your master. You don't need to move to belong. You just need to show up, to do the work, to share it, to find your people, one post, one connection, one conversation at a time. The borders are gone, the world is open, and your voice, no matter where it's coming from, deserves to be heard. Chapter 8. Be nice. The world is a small town. There's an old saying that goes, be kind to people on your way up, because you'll meet them again on your way down. And in the creative world, especially today, that truth echoes louder than ever. In this chapter, Austin Kleon reminds us that the world is a small town, and in small towns people talk, reputations travel, and the way you treat others matters just as much as what you create. The advice is simple: be nice, not in a forced, fake customer service way, not as a networking tactic, but as a default posture toward the world. Because kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. And in the long run, it's one of your greatest creative assets. Kleon begins by painting a picture of the creative scene as a kind of virtual village. It may feel massive, infinite even, but once you start sharing your work, following others, commenting, collaborating, and showing up consistently, you start to see the same names, the same voices, the same rhythms. You realize you're not just building a career, you're becoming part of a community. And in a community, your character speaks louder than your content. If you're helpful, generous, and supportive, people remember. If you're bitter, arrogant, or cruel, people remember that too. Kleon encourages us to root our interactions in generosity. Leave a thoughtful comment, credit your sources, retweet the work of people you admire, send a kind message, say thank you. It's not about sucking up. It's about acknowledging the invisible threads that connect us and treating them with care. Because here's the thing, no one makes it alone. Every artist, writer, thinker, and maker you admire got where they are because someone opened a door, shared their work, offered feedback, took a chance. And when it's your turn to do that for someone else, do it. Lift others, pass the torch, but be the person you needed when you were starting out. This chapter also explores the importance of manners in a digital world. The internet, for all its wonders, often strips away tone and context. It's easy to forget there's a human on the other side of the screen. So Kleon suggests a simple rule. If you wouldn't say it to someone's face at a coffee shop, don't say it online. Be respectful, be patient, be thoughtful. Not every disagreement needs to be a debate. Not every opinion needs to be a war. Sometimes being nice is as simple as letting someone be wrong or letting yourself learn. This isn't about being passive, it's about being constructive. If you admire someone, tell them. Don't just like their post, email them, comment thoughtfully. Let them know their work mattered. Because no matter how big someone's audience gets, every artist is still human, still vulnerable, still listening for echoes of their voice in the world, and your words might be the echo they need. There's also wisdom here for when you face criticism. Kleon warns, not all feedback is worth your time. There will always be trolls, cynics, haters, and people who just don't get you. Don't waste your energy trying to win them over. Instead, focus on your allies, the ones who do get it, the people who are kind, curious, and invested in growth, theirs and yours. Because in a small town, not every voice deserves a microphone. You get to choose who you listen to, and you get to choose the kind of voice you want to be. He also encourages us to remember that reputation is a slow build. It's not something you can buy, hack, or brand. It's earned one email, one conversation, one collaboration at a time, and often it's your niceness that gets remembered more than your resume. When people think of working with you, they won't just ask, is she talented? They'll ask, is she kind? Is she easy to work with? Does she show up? In creative circles, your work gets your foot in the door. But your presence, your energy, your character determines whether people invite you back, and that's the heart of this chapter. Being nice doesn't cost you anything, but over time it earns you everything. Trust, support, collaboration, community, legacy. It's the foundation of creative longevity. Kleon doesn't pretend this is easy. The creative world can be competitive. It's tempting to guard your ideas, to see others as threats, to view success as a limited resource, but scarcity thinking shrinks your world. Generosity expands it. When you share, support, and uplift, it comes back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not directly, but always. This chapter ends with a simple image. The creative world is a small town. People notice how you behave. They remember how you made them feel. So when in doubt, take the high road. Be kind, be generous, be someone others are proud to know, because success is sweet, but shared success, that's unforgettable. Chapter 9, Be Boring. It's the only way to get work done. There's a myth that haunts the creative world. The myth of the wild genius, the tortured soul, chaotically brilliant, ruled by inspiration, living fast, loving hard, burning out young. It's romantic, it's cinematic, and it's completely wrong, because the truth is far less glamorous, but far more sustainable. Most successful creatives are boring, and that's exactly what makes their work possible. In this chapter, Kleon flips the cultural script. He says, be boring. It's the only way to get work done. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear a sigh of relief. Because behind the noise of social media, the pressure to stand out, the illusion of 24/7's excitement, most of us are quietly craving permission to slow down, to focus, to simplify, to build a life that actually supports our creativity. Kleon gives that permission. He reminds us, great work doesn't come from chaos. It comes from structure, from quiet mornings, from predictable routines, from knowing where your pens are, what your habits are, and when your next meal is coming. It's not sexy, but it's powerful. He uses a metaphor that sticks. The creative life is not a road trip, it's a day job, and like any job, it works better with rhythm. You don't have to write a masterpiece every day, but you do have to show up every day and write something. That consistency, that boring, unsexy repetition is where the magic hides. Kleon talks about routines as a form of creative scaffolding. They support the work, they protect the time. They remove decision fatigue and free up mental energy for the stuff that actually matters. For example, he describes how he keeps his daily routine simple. Same breakfast, same desk, same time. Who knows what's coming, so he can put his energy where it counts in the making. There's a deep kind of freedom in routine, because once your basic needs and logistics are handled, you can go wild on the page. You can take risks in your art, because the rest of your life is steady. This chapter is also about personal finance, and Kleon doesn't shy away from it. He urges creatives to be smart with money, not because money is the goal, but because stability buys time. Time to experiment, time to explore, time to make things without panicking about rent. He encourages day jobs, side gigs, anything that gives you a floor beneath your feet. Because starving for your art, it's not noble, it's distracting. You can't create when you're drowning in stress. You can't innovate when your nervous system is in survival mode. So the boring stuff, budgeting, saving, making spreadsheets, becomes part of your creative system. Kleon's point is clear. Don't sacrifice your well-being for the sake of being interesting. A boring life doesn't mean a dull mind. It means a focused one. It means turning down the volume on drama. It means saying no to parties so you can say yes to your process. It means prioritizing sleep, meals, walks, quiet. Because when your life is calm, your art can be bold. He even offers examples from history. Writers like Kafka, who worked day jobs in insurance. Artists like Warhol, who lived with his mother in a small apartment. Creatives who were not the life of the party, but who built towering bodies of work through consistent, disciplined routines. In a culture that celebrates chaos, there's something radical about choosing peace. And that's what Kleon advocates for. A peaceful, steady life where creativity becomes not a rare event, but a daily practice. It's a reminder that the muse doesn't strike randomly. She shows up when she sees you working, when she sees you at the desk, in the chair, ready. So if your life doesn't look like a movie, good. If your days feel predictable, good. That means you're building something. That means you've cleared the space for real creative work. There's also a warning here. Don't fall for the myth that burnout is a badge of honor, that you have to suffer to create something meaningful. You don't. You need sleep, you need breaks, you need balance, because creativity is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And the people who finish the race, they're not the flashiest, they're not the loudest. They're the ones who pace themselves, the ones who build boring, stable, nourishing lives so their minds can roam free. Kleon closes the chapter with something beautiful and true. A boring life is a fertile ground for ideas, for stories, for art. It's the quiet hum beneath the symphony. So embrace it, guard it, let your calendar be dull, let your routines be sacred, because in that boring rhythm, something extraordinary begins to grow. Chapter 1:0 Creativity is Subtraction. We often think creativity means adding more tools, more time, more inspiration, more features, colors, effects, flair, more inputs, more content, more everything. But here, in the final chapter of Steel, like an artist, Austin Kleon offers a quiet, powerful reversal. Creativity is not about more. Creativity is subtraction. That's the core truth. It's about knowing what to leave out, what to say no to, what to ignore, discard, trim away. It's about choosing limits and using them well. Because constraints aren't the enemy, they're the framework, and if you learn how to work within limits, whether that's time, tools, space, or skill, you'll find your voice not despite them, but because of them. Kleon starts with a personal example. He began writing his blackout poems with just a newspaper and a black marker. No fancy software, no elaborate process, just subtraction, literally removing words from a page to reveal a hidden poem underneath. He didn't invent a new language. He uncovered one that was already there, waiting in the silence. That's what creativity through subtraction feels like. It's not about building something from scratch. It's about carving something from chaos. And ironically, the less you have, the more creative you're forced to become. Too many options, you freeze. Too much time, you procrastinate. Too many tools, you get distracted. But when you have only 5 hours, or 3 brushes, or 1 camera, you focus, you adapt, you discover new ways of doing things, ways that often lead to more original, personal work. Kleon cites the film director Stanley Kubrick, who said, "Art consists of reshaping life, but it does not create life. It merely reshapes it." That's the artist's job, to reshape, to refine, to choose. This chapter reminds us that limits don't confine creativity, they define it. Think of the greatest artists, filmmakers, or musicians. What do we remember? Not how much they included, but what they left out. A few brushstrokes that suggest a whole world, melody built from 3 simple notes, a film scene with silence instead of dialogue, and how that silence says everything. Kleon points out that every medium is defined by its limitations. Writers are limited by language, filmmakers by the frame, musicians by the scale, even painters have to choose a canvas-sized dot. It's not about freedom from constraint, it's about freedom within it, and that applies to your life, too. Your energy is limited, your time is limited, your attention is limited, and that's okay. That's beautiful, because once you accept your limits, you begin to ask better questions. What really matters? What can I let go of? Where should I focus my fire? Creativity, through subtraction, becomes a kind of creative clarity. Kleon also talks about the myth of multitasking. He warns us not to confuse being busy with being productive, not to spread ourselves so thin across platforms, projects, and distractions that we lose the thread of what we're really trying to say. He shares the story of how cutting back, simplifying his routine, unplugging from certain apps, saying no 2 gigs that didn't align, actually amplified his creative output. Less noise equals more focus. Fewer distractions equals deeper attention. Smaller scope equals stronger impact. It's the countercultural truth. No algorithm will tell you. You don't need to do everything. You just need to do something deeply, clearly, fully. This chapter also touches on the power of editing, not just in writing or film, but in life. Your career, your days, your energy, they all benefit from thoughtful cuts. You edit your goals. You trim your to-do list. You prune your creative garden so the strongest ideas can grow. It's a kind of creative mindfulness. You stop asking, what else can I add? And start asking, what can I take away? Not to make your work smaller, but to make it sharper. Think of subtraction as intention. Every line you draw, every word you write, every brushstroke you leave on the canvas, it all carries more weight. When it's chosen with care. It's the difference between clutter and clarity. And this final chapter is Kleon's invitation to choose clarity. To stop chasing endless inspiration, to stop hoarding ideas, tools, projects, feedback, to instead slow down and simplify. Because the deeper truth here is spiritual, even philosophical. Saying no is an act of self-definition. What you remove from your creative life says just as much about you as what you include, and as you subtract, as you your workspace, your schedule, your goals, what's left is not emptiness, it's essence, your truest voice, your most honest work, your clearest signal in a noisy world. So as the book comes to a close, Kleon reminds us the secret to creativity isn't more time or more tools or more talent, it's discipline, focus, deliberate limits. Because when you accept your constraints, you stop waiting for permission, you stop looking for the perfect setup, the perfect moment, the perfect conditions, and instead, you start creating here, now, with what you have, and that is enough, because what makes the artist isn't abundance, it's intention, it's knowing what to subtract, so what's left can shine, Final reflection: what Steal Like an Artist really teaches us. So, here we are, the end of Steal Like an Artist. But maybe the beginning of something even more important. The moment where you realize that you too are already an artist. Not because you have a degree, not because you've sold something, not because the world has stamped its approval, but because you have curiosity. Because you notice, because you make things or long to, and that is enough. Austin Kleon's book isn't a how-to manual. It's not filled with formulas, hacks, or guarantees. What it offers instead is something more rare, more vital. Permission. Permission to begin. Permission to borrow. Permission to try, imperfectly, openly, without fear. And in that permission lives a revolution. Because so many of us are held back by invisible walls, by the myth of originality, by the pressure to be great before we've even begun, by the haunting voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" But Kleon answers with a shrug and a smile. You're a collage, a remix, a mosaic made of what you love, what you've seen, what you admire, and what you choose to become. And that's not a weakness, that's your power. Throughout this journey, we've moved through 10 principles, 10 windows into a different way of seeing creativity, identity, and work. We began by stealing, not in the shallow sense, but in the deep, respectful way of learning from those who came before. We saw that nothing is original, and that's what makes everything possible. We learned to write the book we want to read, to fill the voids we feel, to make for others what we most need ourselves. We were reminded that side projects matter, that geography doesn't limit us, that we should share our work, be nice, and stay boring, because what looks ordinary on the surface often hides extraordinary devotion underneath. And we ended with perhaps the most countercultural truth of all, that creativity is subtraction, not the frantic piling on of more, but the brave choice to carve away everything that doesn't serve the work or the life. But beneath all these principles, there's a deeper thread, a thread of freedom, of ownership, of self-definition. This isn't a book about how to fit into the creative world. It's a book about how to build your own, quietly, patiently, on your terms. It reminds us that success is not something bestowed, it's constructed from small acts, from consistent practice, from how you treat others, and how you treat your own process. The real measure of an artist isn't fame or money or perfection. It's persistence. It's showing up over and over again, long after the excitement fades. It's staying curious, staying open, staying human. And perhaps most of all, it's trusting that your voice matters, even when it feels small. Let's zoom out now. Think of the world we live in, an age of infinite access, a flood of noise, opinions, algorithms, distractions, a time where we're expected to be brands, to be optimized, to be on at all times. In this world, Kleon's message is a soft rebellion, a return to something slower, more real, more soulful. He reminds us that you don't need to go viral, you don't need to be perfect, you don't need to be known by millions. You just need to make, to share, to stay kind, to keep going. There's grace in that, a kind of creative minimalism, a way of building a body of work over time, like laying bricks, one poem, one sketch, one blog post, one sketchbook page at a time. And eventually, that pile of bricks becomes a home, not just for your ideas, but for you. The beauty of Steal Like an Artist is that it doesn't ask you to be anything other than what you already are. A thinker, a watcher, a noticer, someone who is deeply moved by things they didn't create, and who in turn wants to contribute something of their own. It tells you you don't have to start from scratch. You don't need the perfect tools or title. You just need to be awake, awake to the beauty around you, awake to the work that stirs you, awake to the tiny voice inside that says, you have something to say. So what do we take from all this? What's the final takeaway? Maybe it's this: creativity is not rare. It's not reserved for the elite, the eccentric, or the gifted. It is accessible, it is learnable, it is livable, but only if you choose it. Only if you stop waiting for permission and start where you are. Only if you stop trying to be a genius and start being genuine. Only if you shift your focus from being discovered to being dedicated. This book offers no shortcuts, but it does offer a path that winds through theft and influence, through habit and patience, through sharing and subtraction, until, one day, you find that you've made something honest, something that looks a little like your heroes, and a lot like you. So here's the final invitation. Steal what you love, honor what inspires you, make peace with your influences, put your head down and do the work. Be kind, be boring, be brave, and above all, keep going, because somewhere, someone needs to see what only you can make, and one day, if you keep at it, you won't just be stealing like an artist, you'll be one.